Why, hello there. I'm Joel Empey, and today I want to take a look forward to UFC on ESPN4 coming up this weekend. Now, this is a banger of a card. I'm not gonna lie. The main card is every single fight I'm extremely excited for, and even on the prelims, there's some great fights. I'm looking at them right here. Raquel Pennington and Irene Aldana is a great fight. Roxanne Mataferi versus Jennifer Maia is a great fight. Ray Borg, you see, making a bantamweight return or debut. And then on the main card, Andrei Arlovsky versus Ben Rothwell, Alexander Hernandez versus Francisco Trinaldo, James Vick versus Dan Hooker, which should probably be the co-main event, but isn't for some reason. Greg Hardy versus Juan Adams, Alexei Olnik versus Walt Harris in the co-main event. A very good fight. I'm not dismissing that when I say that James Vick versus Dan Hooker should probably be the co-main. And then Dos Anjos versus Edwards, which is also regionally, it doesn't really make sense, although that's an amazing fight, a really, really good fight. But today, I want to focus on one fight in particular from this main card, and that's Alexander Hernandez versus Francisco Trinaldo. Now, this is the fight that intrigues me the most. I imagine in one way at least that Alexander Hernandez is probably my number one prospect on this card. I'm always interested in looking at prospects, and I'm always interested in potential. When I'm watching certain athletes, that's what I'm really intrigued in. That's why I like Ben Askren so much. I was really high on him, because he just, he talks so much shit, and then you build so much momentum, and then you want to see the guy just continue to back it up and continue to build momentum, so that way ultimately you can get one of these mega fights. Somebody doesn't get to be a Conor McGregor by playing it safe and being meek and stuff like that. You want to see guys that are confident, and they back it up with their fighting style. And I think Alexander Hernandez is exactly that. He came up short, sure. He came up short last time in his fight against Donald Cerrone, but you could tell the UFC was really trying to push him there. He was originally actually supposed to fight Francisco Trinaldo, the guy who he's fighting this weekend, in January, and they moved him to UFC on ESPN1 to fight Donald Cerrone. That was a really a big opportunity for Hernandez, and I think the UFC was trying to star make Hernandez off of Cerrone's back there a little bit. So had Hernandez had he won that fight, I mean, he was on tremendous momentum from 2018 when he stormed the gates against Beneil Dariush and beat the brakes off Olivier and Aubin Mercier. And if he would have been able to beat Cowboy there, I mean, he probably would have been in line maybe for that interim title shot against Dustin Poirier. Maybe he would have gotten it instead of Max, because rumor had it that Ferguson denied it first. So maybe he would have been a person who would have been offered. Maybe he would have been offered the fight with Ferguson. Even that's a mega fight. You beat Ferguson, you're on top of the world. Anyways, he lost the fight to Cerrone, so all those hypotheticals were out the window. Now he's got the opportunity to reclaim some of that momentum that he lost. And, I mean, he's against no slouch here in Francisco Trinaldo. Francisco Trinaldo is probably one of the most criminally underrated fighters in lightweight history. He's just an absolute murker. He's so hard to finish, and he just batters people. He's 13-5 in his UFC career. I had that stat. He's 10-3 in his last 13 UFC fights. His only loss is coming to James Vick, Kevin Lee, and Michael Chiesa over that last 13 fight stretch. And he's beaten guys like Evan Dunham, tough as nails. Jim Miller, later part of his career, same with Evan Dunham, but still. Paul Felder, he TKO'd Paul Felder. It was a doctor stoppage, but still, I mean, Paul Felder is obviously a really high-ranked contender at the moment and has a lot of momentum in the lightweight division. Yancy Medeiros, Ross Pearson. I remember he destroyed Chad Laprise, who I think is actually another underrated fighter. That's neither here nor there, though. Alexander Hernandez versus Francisco Trinaldo is one of these fights where you've got this young, hot prospect, and he's trying to make his claim back at the top of the division, and he's fighting one of the toughest gatekeepers, and I say gatekeeper with all due respect to Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo doesn't see the fight that way, though. Trinaldo, in his mind, this is his opportunity to extinguish a hot prospect and to make his claim that he's not a gatekeeper, and he's a real threat in the top 15 of the UFC. So I think if you can beat Francisco Trinaldo, I know he's unranked right now, but I think only really top 10 type of talent are getting through Trinaldo. So this is a big test for Hernandez. If he can get through this one, I mean, we're back off to the races. That Cerrone loss is now just a blip on the radar, and we're full steam ahead. He could be taking on. I think if Hernandez can win, especially if he could finish Trinaldo, I mean, I think that a great fight for him next would be the winner of that Felder-Edson Barboza rematch that's coming down the pipe. I don't really see Felder being interested in a rematch with Trinaldo if Trinaldo were to win, but I could see Felder maybe wanting to take on Alexander Hernandez, even though Felder's a forward-thinking guy. And I think Barboza would just take on either one of them if they won. I think Barboza doesn't really care. That guy's a pure savage, and he doesn't have the same designs, I don't think, on title implications that Paul Felder does. Paul Felder's really looking forward and is really trying to make his claim at the lightweight title. So he's not really trying to fight guys behind him. So he definitely, I don't think, would give Trinaldo the rematch if Trinaldo were to win. But Hernandez, he's a hot prospect. That could be a future fight. Anyways, these future thinking about future potential matchups and stuff like that. That's really what I like to do. I'm really a fan of the storylines in MMA, and I really like following these characters and imagining possible scenarios and how things are going to play out. I'm a real fan from that perspective. I'm not trying to break down the X's and O's like a Luke Thomas or Dan Hardy or Robin Black, although I love watching that stuff, and I consume it, and I try to learn as much as I can. I'm not the guy who's going to do that. I'm the guy who wants to speculate on future prospects, wants to break down storylines, wants to illuminate maybe certain storylines that you're not aware of, make fights more intriguing. Because it's really the story of fights that make them super intriguing to me. It's obviously, I love watching skill and talent and everything, but when you can match talent, skill with confidence and the gift of gab, then you've got something really magical. And that's what I believe we have with Alexander Hernandez. So, spoiler, I'm going to be pulling for Hernandez this week, and I really think that he can get the job done. But, in MMA, I'm never surprised and I'm never disappointed. Or I'm disappointed, but I'm never, distraught about, certain outcomes. I've seen it all now, being a fan for 13, 14 years, basically never missing an event. I've seen it all. I've seen all the upsets and unlikely things happen. And, yeah, so I'm pulling for Hernandez. Let me know who you're pulling for. Also, in the comments below, let me know if, what future fights you would like to see for potential winners of any of the fights coming up on the weekend, and different topics that you're interested in, and what do you think about any of the ideas that I brought up today. And also, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me at Empey Talks on Twitter, Joel Empey Talks Instagram, and Joel Empey Talks on Facebook. Cheers, guys.